Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
It's still, people still sleep here.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
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 How are you?
Good. It's 10 a.m. here, but it feels like it's 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I have blackout curtains, which I appreciate at night, but I'd rather be woken up by light in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the earliest sunset time, if I'm remembering right from last year, was like 4:58 here.
Okay.
It definitely broke 5 p.m.
I don't know. Jesse put the notion in the Slack. I haven't seen him yet. So here he is. All right. So let's get started. I hope everyone has had a good week. I know that Amanda presented yesterday at ISPSM, and we'll hear about that perhaps. Also, I think we met Wednesday, so yeah. Jesse put the Notion link in the chat, so anyone can put things in there if you want. Yeah, we met Wednesday. We had a good meeting. Probably have maybe one or two more before the end of the year. For that meeting, the Cognition Futures meeting. Our Saturday meeting will probably go up until maybe the middle of the month. We'll see how people feel. And then our Thursday meeting is off until the beginning of the year. That's the reading group. I guess cybernetics reading group now. And so and then Diva Worm probably will take a hiatus, during the latter part of this coming month. So, all right. So I'm going to open the floor for updates.
I can go ahead.
Okay.
ISPSM was good. I struggled to pick what should end up in the presentation. So, I mean, it was 20 minutes, but I felt like it was missing things. But that's fine. It went well. I attended the breakout session that I was a part of, and those talks were all pretty good. And then I attended one that on the program was labeled psychiatry, but now I think only one of them was actually about psychiatry. Yeah, some of them were pretty good. I mean, they were all good, but some of them they reminded me why I didn't want to continue with academic philosophy. And I also went to the keynote, and that was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I shared a screenshot of the title slide. Yeah, so, and I recorded my talk, so I can send it to you, Bradley, for the YouTube channel.
Okay, that's good. Yes, please do. Thank you.
And I do want to keep working on the project and eventually get I realized, I told Jesse this, I realized I wouldn't be fully satisfied with it unless it's in the form of a full paper, I think. I was just really struggling to pick what to put in the presentation. And ultimately I cited the things that the reviewer pointed us towards. But then I had to sacrifice some other parts. I don't know. It still went well, but
yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Congratulations on presentation well received. And yeah, I think, this is the model, right? You do a couple of presentations and then you do a paper. I mean, it doesn't have to go that way, but that's a good way to do it. You lay out your thoughts and then you figure out, okay, what do I want to do in a paper that's more than that? It just kind of builds on itself. So, yeah, that's great. Well, good luck. It's good that you were able to get all that done this year. So that was earlier in the year. Of course, you had the embodied intelligence workshop, and then now you've had the ISPSM, and now you're going to work on a paper. So that's That's pretty good. Yeah. All right. Yes, I look forward to seeing your presentation. I'll put it up on the YouTube channel as soon as I can. So.
Yeah, I can send it to you today.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. So yeah, any other updates?
I have a couple, or just things that definitely kind of talked about on Slack, but there was the Stanford. I think the institute's the human-centric artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Anyway, it still looks like it says HAL.
Yeah.
It's A. Yeah. But Ellen Kuhl was the speaker, and I mean, I wanted to see it because she was talking about automated model discovery, and it looked like it was an AI talk.
Oh, okay.
Everything suggested this was going to be a modeling talk.
Yeah.
And, but it was super interesting because she's a mechanical engineering professor, and her research area is mechanical modeling of the brain.
Oh, okay.
And so it was really fascinating. One, just someone taking that kind of, very, great physics models applied to the brain, specifically for stress, shear, torsion, all the mechanical properties. I think she's very interested in like neurosurgical applications as well as like traumatic brain injury, things like that. And because she's a mechanical engineer, she's using finite element models as well, right? So great way to do physics, but and that is exactly why we do it for electromagnetism.
Yeah.
And so, she wasn't specifically focused on the kinds of things that electrophysiologists are focused on, but like has so much of that work is relevant for electrophysiologists, or especially people doing non-invasive electrophysiology. So it's going to be really interesting to follow up with her and her group in terms of what they've been trying to do to validate their modeling non-invasively. So, it's only like halfway through that I realized that she was a brain modeler. And by the time I asked questions, I didn't realize she'd already worked with some of the MR radiology groups at Stanford. So she's tried MR elastography, which is a way of actually getting at mechanical forces from MR. But she said that hadn't worked so well, and which isn't surprising because it's a pretty weak effect in MR. But it'd be really interesting to follow up with her about transcranial ultrasound and electrical impedance tomography, because you can actually use impedance to make inferences about say tissue properties. So that was really interesting, and yeah, they are also doing some really different stuff. I mean, now that I've seen her Google Scholar, like she's published with all the kind of pins people in terms of physics-informed neural net modeling, but what she's doing in this automated model discovery talk is a different way of incorporating it into the network model, and actually doing like using multiple models and then allowing the network optimization to do the to kind of give you what's the best evidence, or what gets weighted is the model that is the most effective, and kind of thing. So anyway, it's interesting, and I put some links in the open chat. We Amanda and I met with two students in Brussels and Paris, and talked about the recent paper from the Oxford MEG group on OSL dynamics, and their dynamo technique for temporal delay embedding analysis. And that was interesting. I mean, that was just kind of me reading through the paper, and not necessarily doing justice to the technical details, which are quite complex, but getting a sense of the paper, what they're trying to accomplish. And it was great because one of the students in Brussels actually just had a visit from Diego Vider, who's the first author on a lot of the papers that first presented this kind of work, right? So the OSL Dynamics paper is really about their software package, their Python package for doing this, and has lots of details about it. It's really helpful. This is work that his group, or Woolrich's group, and others in Oxford have presented over the last kind of 5 years, and it would be really worth going through and seeing this applied to larger data sets. And this was just an example. They had just a couple of small example data sets that they used because it was a software package kind of presentation. And anyway, that should be really interesting. We're going to keep meeting, I think, and we've talked about covering this new paper that Emory Brown's an author on, big anesthesiologist, researcher, and Earl Miller, of course, neuroscientist, and their kind of related technique they're calling delace, which is, again, a kind of temporal embedding inference technique, or a temporal embedding analysis technique. So, and moving to what I'd only previously seen Terry Sinowski use, which are these delay differential equations. So it's, again, getting at it's like a recurrent neural network, but anyway, they're taking this package for computational fluid dynamics and applying it to anesthesia data. So we've got this great paper that I think we've talked about a couple weeks ago from Montreal, in terms of comparing multiple anesthesias and using criticality and chaosity measures to kind of perhaps find differences between the anesthesias as well as the anesthesias and resting awake EEG. And just trying to think, Amanda, if there was anything missing from that. But again, like, really interesting, the groups that join us in Paris, in the Paris Brain Group, Paris Brain Institute. It's the sleep. It's their dream team, which is not so much characterization of the team, but their research focus on sleep and dreaming. And it is interesting. I don't know if I've talked about it here, but there's an online journal club called Neurocino, and they post their recordings. It's a Zoom group, and they record and so last week, or sorry, no, it's this week. They covered this temporal interference transcranial electrical stimulation paper. A new Ed Boynton paper. Again, he's not the last author, but I think he's like the second last. And using this technique to stimulate the hippocampus. So again, this is a technique that he first published maybe seven years ago now, I think. But here's now they're actually doing it on cadavers and trying to show you can hit a small target, subcortical target. And the paper they did the week before was actually from the Paris group's dream team, where it was about basically how people are responsive while they're still asleep. So verbal, I think it was verbal response while sleeping. So I recommend both recordings, and I can point links. So we talked a bit about how it'd be interesting to apply this technique to sleep data, and of course anesthesia or drug challenge data. Yes, that's the paper.
Oh, was that the one where people were smiling or something in response to questions while sleeping?
Yeah. So anyway, so one of Delphine Audiette, I think, is the last author. Forgive me, I don't have my laptop's not connected to the internet for some reason. But yeah, I can find that reference too, and really interesting because we had talked about trying to do something. We were trying to catch people while they were just waking up, because we didn't think that you could. Well, part of it was just to get them with their eyes open and do visual stimulation, but this paper is showing that maybe you can do more while people are asleep and still be interesting. And I feel like there was one more. Anyway, yeah, we're going to cover another paper next week, and if I think of more, I'll chime in later.
All right, yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I'll probably go through the Slack here in a little bit, so we'll kind of look at it in more detail.
Oh, yeah, and they as a separate thing, another group on the Paris Slack was talking about more whole brain simulations, and specifically Drosophila, and talking about the Flywire consortium and using that as the basis of new modeling. But I was super, people were asking me about the wireless proteome or neuropeptide connectome work, and so I put a link to the video from last week for them, but also was curious about if you could say anything about the current state of is it C302?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more about like the state of open worms simulation, and how are they planning to incorporate in, say, some of this new work, for instance.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah. But yeah, thank you for the update, and that's great. Jesse, did you want to have an update now, or?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My update will be fairly limited. It's stemming from some things. We had a very nice meeting Wednesday. We talked about cognition future stuff. Talked about continuing the coding metaphor paper. We spent some time. We talked about I forget whose name is what, but the What About Bunny account, following the dog, and talked a little bit about the comparative cognition lab at UCSD, and also some of my explorations in sort of the science and technology studies space. What I will say about some of that and the sort of project framing that I'm working on is that I'm a little I think I have I have my sense of where I want to frame certain things in the project that I'm working on. It's kind of been the thing in the background for me that's been taking up sort of my creative energy, and I feel like I've turned a little bit of a corner on it. I'm not sure. I was kind of exploring the science technology space, and that might be a nice framework for it. But I think I'm doing this sort of. It's just tough because I don't really know. I don't really have a lot of examples for what I really want to do, and then that makes it quite challenging to be satisfied with it, because the project is somewhere between, theory and implementation in terms of what I'm trying to do at different levels. And it's less that I'm trying to get this sort of huge interdisciplinary effort, which is, a challenging thing in and of itself, to have like different domain spaces that are looked at, and more what specific things am I trying to cultivate or develop in a domain agnostic space, and then trying to make it interdisciplinary, both in terms of some of the practice and in terms of looking at actual domains and the idea work or theory work or implementation challenges in them. So I've just been sorting out what that is, and it's been a challenging bit of practice, because it's juxtaposed to, like, I think cognition features is a great example of a really important thing in that space, because we've had this really ongoing deep conversation, yes, a lot about the phenomenology and Burroughs' trajectory, but also like the adjacent stuff that's come up through like reading the Northern Wider stuff, through a lot of the other, you could say peripheral, but the implications, because when you're looking at the methodologies and the way the trajectory has gone in this particular case, you get to see, why or why not. And I think it's been really informative for me as a kind of model. And again, like there's a little bit of sort of autoethnographic work I'm trying to instill into it too, and trying to take seriously for myself, trying to make the project, or I don't know what to really refer to it as yet. I mentioned things like person studies before, but this is quite different, and the scoping is different. And apologies if it's a bit. People probably don't really know exactly what I'm talking about right now, but what I was saying is the wheels continue to churn on that. And I asked, I wanted to talk to Bradley specifically about it this week, and I couldn't quite do it Friday, but not that, but like kind of things in general. So I look forward to kind of meeting hopefully next week to catch up on some things there. But I think for me, things are going well there. There's stuff I want to do with. I still want to do my ISPM related stuff. I'm really happy that Amanda's done that and pushed that forward, like you said, since earlier this year, the Embodied Intelligence Workshop or conference, I guess it is, and throughout here, like that's been a really nice thing to see. So that's my general update. My mind is very much in the year ahead and thinking, how can I do things over the next month so that the year ahead is going, and then the things that we want to sort of blossom a bit will continue to do that. But that's my update for now.
That's great. Thank you. So yeah, I saw some of the science and technology study stuff you put in the Slack. So, I guess, trying to find a sort of an angle for a lot of projects is kind of tough. Like, on the one hand, you want to stake your own ground, but on the other hand, you want to sort of ground it in something people can compare it to. That's both good and bad because, it gives people a sort of a frame of reference for what you're doing, but also people can have certain expectations, and especially if it's interdisciplinary, your work isn't going to meet all those definitions. But I think I think the science and technology studies focus is good to kind of explore and see where things fit into that. It's a pretty big field, so I don't know where exactly. We'd have to talk about it more. But yeah, so that's
I'm going to try to share this because I found something that really nicely captures. It was something that a friend of mine wrote, and it's just an image they put together. And there's someone I met at I'm not sure this thing here. Okay, it's coming. There's someone I met actually again, going back to the Princeton Vision days, young and carefree students back then, if you want to say that, which maybe isn't entirely accurate, but it feels like that relative to today. And I think this is stuff totally of their own doing. Like I didn't prompt them to write this, but I think it captures some of the spirit of what it is that I'm kind of working on. And it basically says, where are the people hopeful about and excited about the future outside of the tech world / Silicon Valley? It seems to be the exclusive right of tech world. It's the exclusive right of the tech world to be excited now. And I guess all the capital is there. And nowhere else is excited about the future because they should be wrong. And what do optimism and agency look like without losing nuance or throwing criticality out the window? And it's sort of this, this is just someone, I think this is an Instagram story originally or something like that. And I won't say who it is for whatever reason, but I think this captures some of what I'm trying to get at a feelings or aspirational level, because many of the people, especially in the sort of post, I think a lot of the EA fascination has crested, and I actually I was just looking also at
is that mind control, Morgan? Or are you just kind of oh
someone shared Derek Bowen's stuff, Derek's mind blog somewhere. Someone posted that, I think.
That was me. Yeah. His metacognition. Yeah.
There's this here, and there's another one over here on the side, like religious wars, and it is religious wars in the tech industry. And I haven't fully vetted this article, so bear with me. But I thought it's related to my previous commentary, but there's sort of these legions that people trained to be techno optimists or techno pessimists, perhaps in future ways, and it's sort of like a thing about my Logan Thrasher Collins we talk about sometimes, and Logan's always trying to champion the future in ways and like talk about it in ways that are optimistic. And I really appreciate that he cares about that to the degree that he does. But I feel like, going back to the image I posted, there's sort of it's sort of like, what do you do? And I think I would say it's not just like the tech industry. I think it extends to people in philosophy, people trying to do more frontline work in the space that are meshing some things about implementations of like social theory and social work, and like people in health spaces. Like it's sort of this, what do you do about the future, and where do you put, like, what are you trying to do in a way that's not just dogmatic or silver bullety, and like putting a lot of heavy in-group out-group pressure on the people doing the work, and that you have to be an ideologue for this process or not. And I feel like the image that I shared really captured a very earnest take. As someone who was, we were all younger at that event, and there's sort of the younger idealism, but also just like the waves and the cresting of the AI stuff. And you can say hype, but you can say summer and winter, but also just like what's out there to do, and how do you have a sense of, exactly as the image said, like where do you have the spaces for nuance and critique while still pursuing future things? And I think that's just there's much more than that, but I thought that as sort of a almost artistic level, that's something I wanted to mention, because I think that image particularly captured I don't know, some of the things at play. So that's all for now.
Jesse, did you have a chance to look at the Cory Doctorow link that I posted? He kind of spoke to the same, religious war, but I think he might have added some things, at least kind of related to what you just said.
I'm not sure which part.
I think I got back online, but he.
Do you remember which channel it was in?
Maybe Society Tech.
Okay.
Sorry.
I go to that link and I see Bradley sharing a very relevant post by Brian Chow. Did you guys know about the 24-author paper by E.A.'s Fouriers about totalitarianism?
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely necessary to present the after telling everybody, which I think is fitting a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got back onto the network here, so I'll find it. I definitely like. I mean, Cory talks about kind of the same religious war, but then he goes into a lot of like, what we can do, or who's trying to, chart a course forward, that's realistic and still treats people as valuable, and etc. Anyway, I'll find the link. Yeah, and tall order, and seeing, because it's Cory Doctorow, he's going to talk a lot about tech industry consolidation, and our the forces against us are much more powerful, now than they were, 20 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for the update, Jesse. I had a question about the metacognition article. We kind of glossed over that. It looked interesting, but I didn't know what the sort of the gist of the article was. Do you mind
I haven't
sharing
really
your
read
screen
it.
again? Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Morgan wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I can actually go back to it later, but yeah. Well, thanks for the article. Yeah. Let me share my screen. We'll go through some of the Slack in more detail. So some of it we'll kind of go through the channels and look what's there. Let's see. So yeah, this is okay. Let's start in cognition futures. There seems to have been a lot of stuff here. So this is what we were talking about. This is Amanda's. This is the abstract for the keynote from yesterday. This is Gualtiero Piccinini, who we've talked about. This is, I guess, the presidential address for the conference. So this is Cognition, the Modern Synthesis. I will argue that an adequate account of cognition should integrate genetics and development, neural mechanisms, neurocomputation and representation, the role of affect, the situatedness and dynamical aspects of cognition, and more, within an evolutionary framework. I will suggest some steps that might be helpful in moving towards such a synthesis. So did you get to go to this, Amanda?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so it was basically, he briefly talked about all of those things on that list and kind of gave his takes on what seemed fruitful and what did not, which I appreciated because it was coming from someone who, knows his stuff and is very in touch with what all this research looks like.
But
at the same time, it's kind of stayed on the surface because he did touch on all of those things, and he was basically arguing for them all to be integrated, but it was kind of therefore surface level regarding each of those topics. He talked briefly about how to bring in the evolutionary perspective without just being an evolutionary psychologist, because one of the problems with evolutionary psychology is you end up with an infinite number of mental modules, each one that's evolved to solve some particular problem, and that seems implausible. But you can still have evolutionary considerations in mind when talking about psychology. He gave one example of that. It was about 2 different possible sources of altruistic behavior. I don't remember the details. He briefly talked about computation and said that we have to basically pay attention to alternative views of computation that aren't just the brain as a digital computer, which seemed right. We've talked about that quite a bit. Yeah, that's basically what I remember. But I think it was all recorded, and so it should be on YouTube at some point.
Oh, that would be great, because I missed the entire thing. I mean, it was kind of off our timeline, our time period for people in North America, and yeah. Yeah,
luckily his keynote was 11 a.m., I think. It wasn't too bad.
But I still missed it, so. Well, that's great. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, it's, this is something that we talked about with our sort of discussions about cognitive science, how, how inclusive should cognitive science be? And so some people, just kind of, they rehash cognitive psych, or it's cognitive psychology plus cognitive neuroscience, or maybe some sort of computational aspect. And he's really arguing for sort of maybe an integrative cognitive or cognitive science with biology and psychology and, that all sort of together. And so that's
yeah. And he appealed to the modern synthesis in evolution to kind of point to how it wasn't just like, it seemed like that was a real dialogue between fields that had previously been separate, like cell biology and aspects of anthropology, but it was like a real integration of these concepts across disciplines. He brought up he called it the cognitive science hexagon. You might know what he's talking about, where it lists like, it's a little hexagon and it has all the disciplines that are supposed to be the cognitive sciences, like linguistics, philosophy, anthropology. It was funny because he was like, when I was, in school in the 90s, like this is what they taught us. This was like the impression of cognitive science. And I was like, well, when I was in school in the 2010s, this was also what I was shown. So he contrasted his kind of approach with that list of like what ultimately remained kind of separate cognitive sciences, which is another thing we've talked about here. And that's where he noted that like evolution and biology were never a part of that. Maybe like kind of purposefully, because that seemed really difficult and it would be hard to make progress in all those other disciplines if you have to have like evolutionary considerations.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that report. We've talked about the cognitive science hexagon. In fact, that was sort of the idea, the role of development in cognitive science. So there was a discussion panel on that as well, right? Or was that part
Yeah, that's what we did at CogSci, was basically that. Like we kind of wondered, we part of the panel or whatever, I guess his discussion group was about that specifically. So I'm curious to see the guys talk. That sounds. Thank you for sharing that, Amanda.
Yeah, right. We did host that discussion group at CogSci 2021, and the video's on our YouTube channel. So I can't remember everything that was there, but it'd be interesting to dig back into that because it's kind of like an archaeology of past efforts. Because we talk about things and kind of they float by and new people come in and it's like what have we done? So I know Jesse in that session, Jesse reviewed a paper on it was like development.
Yeah, I think it was like Arientes or Arentes. It was basically something like the role of development in psychology and cognitive science or something like that. And it kind of addressed that same thing. There was no, there was saying that it's hard to do, and how do you do it, and why haven't we done it? And he talked about the concern and talked about, okay, well, developmental robotics is developmental robotics is one way to do it. But I think I'm really curious to see how that would square with what the keynote said, because I think there'd be a little more, and I think that kind of, like I remember a conversation. I think most of the people here were in it or around it, and there's something I was saying to Brian McCorkle, who's a sort of not active lab member, but someone who's sort of tied to us, and we were talking about what's sort of the next, what's after Fourier cognition, this is sort of the paradigm right now about this stuff, and what's not in it, and where do we go with that? Because there's obviously, how do you frame that? So, and I think I really wish, I hope as much of I would really like to look more at the ISPSM conference as a whole. It's unpleasant for me personally, because it's like I haven't been able to do almost anything with it, and I found it and I was really excited, and I'm glad Ines Polito and other people are doing really great, fun stuff there. So I hope I can look at the keynote and much more, because I think it's a really worthy endeavor that the whole conference is centered on.
Yeah, definitely. We should kind of think more about this sort of stuff, because we've talked about it before on the Cognition Futures group, but it's kind of like we haven't put together any sort of concrete, like, we've talked about kind of laying down our markers for what CogSci should look like, but we haven't done that really. We haven't actually done like maybe a position paper or a position talk or something like that where we could lay down those markers. I like the way that Piccinini approached it, but I'd like to get maybe more detail about like, how does that relate to the hexagon? Do we need like maybe an octagon or, maybe, a hexagon with depth or something like that?
Yeah. And always, yeah. And I feel like, my immediate take on that is like, there's the incremental approach that would be tenable. Like, yes, let's add another, geometric configuration in the mix versus some of the more outlandish takes I think that I'm toying with around are like, yeah, like we, what is the correct starting point to come from, and how do you build from there while not throwing everything else out with the bathwater? That's I think that's, and I mean, I know there's much, personally, I'm trying to ride this line between, that, and as someone there's people who've been, thinking about this for a very long time, and they have their ideas about it, and it's sort of like, okay, what do I really feel about that versus what's the new insight I can really bring to that? And I think, maybe because I do appreciate the encouragement or the nudge, I guess, to make a position paper from our group. And I wondered in the moment, would it be a position or would it be almost like a spectrum paper saying, here's sort of what the spectrum of our inquiries are in terms of the more tenable views, and like incrementally, like, okay, we want to, not saying this is one, but we want to center, Varelian neurophenomenology in this way and expand, like, yes, maybe we're 100% on cardiophenomenology and other aspects and integrating that into it. Or maybe it's like, well, maybe we have like a more cautious take on it. And we say that's part of the neurophenomenology spectrum, sure. Or part of the spectrum of cognitive science and neurophenomenology that way. What about development? What about evolution? What about more like, nuance in that degree? What about time scales? What about comparative cognition? What about Dizzy and things that are delving a little more into some of like the Michael Levin umbrella, where I feel like I and that's something to talk about. We could talk about it here or later, but I think it's a worthy challenge to even try to consolidate the views into a report of some kind. But maybe we should try to do that. I'm open to views.
Yeah, I think we already kind of have that outline. Like we have things that we've explored and things that maybe we'd like to link together. So those things already are kind of sitting there. We just need to put them out into a document or something that we can like put out in the world that people can like follow along and say, this is our like kind of the way we've approached cognitive science, and this is what we think should be in an a truly integrative cognitive science. And if that maps to some sort of some sort of polygon, then so be it. And if it doesn't, then I think working through the examples and kind of putting them, just kind of drawing out boxes on a whiteboard, filling in the boxes, and then seeing how they're related can help us kind of say, this is sort of, maybe multiple paths to, cognitive science, whatever that is. So you could take a route through that path of topics maybe it sets up an experiment, maybe it sets up a modeling or simulation type approach, whatever. And then, we can say, so this actually these kind of paths take this kind of approach and leads to something that you can actually investigate. So this is like, how someone might ask, okay, it's great that you're being so inclusive, but how do you actually execute this, create a study or whatever? And so then we could offer them that set of pathways. So at some point I want to think about like what we want to do for the next year. I don't know, later on after I finish with the Slack stuff, if Jesse wants to pull up the board or I guess it's in the Notion doc, but the table of submissions and things like that, that would be good. But I just want to go through for like the plan for like the coming year and kind of.
I'd appreciate talking about that too.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the Slack. So we talked about this. That's great. We also had this seminar in Math and Consciousness, Mathematical Consciousness Science online seminars. This is something Morgan posted. This is an online seminar series exploring all mathematics and consciousness.
And I saw it because YouTube had recommended like some EPFL people talking about neuronal morphology and things like that, but they had talks that I thought were very relevant to the Cognition Futures group from someone. I was wondering if you know him, someone here at SF State, Carlos. Shoot. Anyway, I'll find the name. But if you go through the list of speakers, I was wondering if there was anybody you recognized.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I might. I'll look through it later. So yeah, this is another thing that Morgan posted: topological analysis of neuronal morphologies and networks. So this is a talk. This looks really interesting.
Yeah. I just put it in the wrong group in the sense that like that's where I got the suggestion about the mathematical consciousness science. But it's very much a kind of it's a straight up like neuroscience networks or something kind of talk. It's like hardcore EPFL people from Blue Brain. Yeah.
Oh, so this is like the whole brain simulation type stuff.
Yeah. They're real fine grained stuff,
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Meta Learned Models of Cognition article, or the post, and this is okay. So this is I pass on the text of a recent email from Behavioral and Brain Sciences, inviting commentary in an article by Binz et al. I'm beginning to plow through the interesting text and figures, and will mention that motivated readers can obtain a PDF article. This is Meta Learned Models of Cognition. This is by a number of authors. And then this is, so they're, how they do with behavioral and brain sciences, they publish a target article and then they have the responses, and people can give responses of like 2 to 3 pages, I guess. And so, the commentary is wide ranging. We're talking about an article like that now in the Cognition Futures Reading Group. That's the one on neural codes. So that has a lot of commentary after the main article that's really informative. And we'll go through that later. But, suffice it to say that, this is something that, different groups will come together and they'll kind of take their own perspective on it. So I don't know if we have the clout to do this or but this is interesting kind of thing. So this is an article. I don't know if I don't have access to it right now, but
yeah, we could email Derek though, and he said he would share the PDF.
Okay, yeah. So this is basically so the article abstract reads: psychologists and neuroscientists extensively rely on computational models for studying and analyzing the human mind. Traditionally, such models have been hand-designed by expert researchers. Two prominent examples are cognitive architectures and Bayesian models of cognition. So this is, we talked about cognitive architectures, and just it's basically like if you have a bunch of, it's like one step towards theory, but it's not really theory because it's, you do maybe a bunch of studies and you build a cognitive model, and it's basically boxes and arrows where you say these are the parts of cognition and that we're interested in, and here's what it looks like, and it should generalize to to multiple all sorts of human subjects, whether it generalizes to animals or not. It's not not really a thing that too many cognitive scientists worry about. But anyways, so while the former requires a specification of a fixed set of computational structures and a definition of how these structures interact with each other, the latter necessitates the commitment to a particular prior and likelihood function, which in combination with Bayes' rule determines the model's behavior. And so this is again, the difference between boxes and arrows and sort of a mathematical model and an assumption about the behavior of the model itself. In recent years, a new framework has established itself as a promising tool for building models of human cognition. And this is where they get into the framework of meta-learning. So in meta-learning, in contrast to cognitive models and Bayesian models, meta-learned models acquire their inductive biases from experience. So, they basically operate on the world and then encode the experience. So they repeatedly interact with the environment. However, a coherent research program around meta-learned models of cognition is still missing to this day. The purpose of this article is to synthesize previous work in the field and establish such a research program. We accomplish this by pointing out that meta-learning can be used to construct Bayes optimal learning algorithms, allowing us to draw strong connections to the rational analysis of cognition. So this is where you can use this kind of experience. The agent can experience the world and operate on the world, and then build some sort of algorithm that allows them to navigate that world. So, in a sense, it's kind of like the idea of heuristics. So this goes back to decision-making literature, where the idea is that you don't, have a model of the world. You don't have a model of decision-making sort of innate, or even learned from a couple of, something that's sort of top-down that you can teach in school. It's sort of like people figure out how to make decisions based on their current situation. They do things like satisficing, and they develop these heuristics, which are just good enough solutions to a problem. So, if you're trying to find a way to share your screen in Jitsi, you might try a bunch of things and then pick the first thing that works and stick with that thing. And then it may not be the optimal choice, but that's how you've learned to do it. And so that's just one example. And so this is kind of what they're saying, is there's this aspect of meta-learning where you learn things through experience, and then you build rules or some sort of procedure to accomplish this in the future. And so you're actually constructing learning on top of learning. And so they look at this in terms of Bayes optimal learning algorithms, allowing us to draw strong connections to the rational analysis of cognition. And then they discuss several advantages of the meta-learning framework over traditional methods, and re-examine prior work in the context of these new insights. So this seems like something that you would have, there would be a lot of contention around, and the contentious part of it is, people who maybe are invested in meta-learning and say, you're wrong. Well, we'll see what that looks like. But I think that's, we could, we should talk a little bit more about meta-learning in future endeavors, especially, we have our model of cognitive science. We have all these different things. Our group has, I think, a pretty diverse, especially compared to other groups, a view of this, pretty inclusive view. And so, meta-learning is an interesting take on it, especially if you're talking about meta learning as a way to sort of bootstrap cognition, or to, think about cognition, not just decision making, but other types of cognition. So that's an interesting article. I mean, there's a whole literature of meta learning. So
yeah, but I also was interested, just because Botvinnik, sorry, yeah, it's involved. I was just thinking about that debate on David Foe, about neuro AI. And, this is someone who's very involved with the bigger groups that are doing learning across multiple tasks, learning across multiple domains, and very aware of where, to some degree, where the tech industry is, right, with their resources and their scale. So I'd love to actually ask, Derek for more of the details on, see if we can get access to that and see what they're really talking about. And I just wanted to say, like, how the Alan Kuhl talk about automated model discovery seemed kind of relevant to this meta learning approach, at least to some degree. And I could say more if I knew more about the actual paper. Derek.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, yeah, that would probably deserve, like, to have to go through the paper, like we went through the neural coding paper, and kind of for each figure and everything. So yeah, we should revisit that, I think, in the cognition futures especially. And then Amanda had some YouTube suggestion algorithm things here. The Society Ethics in Tech. So this was the pluralistic.net. Morgan just posted.
I just dropped that in for Jesse. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is the real AI fight. This is about the whole. I guess it's religious now. Okay.
Well, he's just talking about the kind of the two groups, but he goes down to say some more or positive things about LLMs being used to find people who've been wrongly imprisoned, and some great some other good stuff there too, in terms of the real dangers that are happening now as opposed to future calamities. I was just thinking about this relevant to health insurance, and like how in the United States it's not really, they work against you in terms of you don't really want to disclose everything, all your prior conditions,
right? Because
you could be denied health insurance,
right?
These are not problems that other developed nations have.
Yeah.
And and that's crazy. I think it's a good read.
Right. There's Frontier AI Regulation. This is the thing I posted. This was a X post where this was the 24 author paper by Effective Altruists about how totalitarianism is necessary to prevent AI from killing everyone. So it's just kind of going over that argument. And then this is an AI drama news. I'm not sure what this is. It's something Jesse posted. Oh, this is talking more about the Altman situation. So we talked about that a couple weeks ago, and it turns out that he was reinstated, and they changed the board, and they put Larry Summers on there for some reason. But this is kind of going through some of this. The AGI mandate of heaven, which is scary. I don't know what's going on here, but this is just kind of like strategizing in that space, and this is another bit about that. So let me go back up to the computational psychiatry channel. So I think we had some interesting things here. So we had, oh, that's not it. Computational psychiatry. Here we go. This is Morgan, of course, is kind of the leader on this channel. So we've got eye tracking, the future of diagnostics, prognostics and treatment planning in autism. That's an interesting video. This one on towards robust interpretability methods for large language models, and this is for considering large language models for mental health interventions, which is actually, is like one of the application domains that people are most excited about, is like using chatbots and large language models for like therapy, or like answering questions. We talked about this before in our meetings, but and then we have.
It was interesting on the back of this talk at UVA from sorry, I can't remember the woman's name. They're just above there.
Oh, yeah.
They she's like the head of data science for some large group at NIH, and was talking specifically about chatbots, but also how much doctors need information organized, and like data, like augmentation aids for frontline doctors, and again, like I think very much caught up in the strange way that the United States does healthcare and pays for it, because she talks, and having to justify CPT codes and things like that. So okay, good, yeah. So I mean, super important. I wanted to say, totally relevant to this, in the Cory Doctorow article, he talks about this Ben Goldacre, who's the applied data science, the new Bennett Institute Applied Data Science in Oxford. This is the bad science author, but he's also developed, basically he's shown with open prescription and open safely and a number of web efforts how you can really apply, good machine learning at scale to, make a difference. Anyway, it's I think there's some uniquely American problems that she talks about, how large language models can help solve, and just how important the interpretability is if you're going to have these algorithms going through and doing things with. Sorry, I'm just seeing the chat from Jesse.
AI problems with American characteristics.
Oh yeah.
with American exceptionalism. Yeah. Anyway, like back to back, it was really interesting. So talking just about like clinical BERT and things like that, or certainly the history of it starts with clinical BERT, and then what needs to be improved in terms of going through electronic health records, sorting through doctors' notes and things like that. But then I think really relevant again, Cory Doctorow was talking about, like, well, if the algorithms aren't transparent, then people might withhold information because they're afraid they're going to be denied care, which nobody should be denied care.
Right. So Jesse says here, thinking ahead to the new year, I would actually like to make a discussion hub about this going forward, a medical health tech. Yeah, I think that would be good, and we could do that in the Discord if we want to do that. Because I mean, we've talked about this with respect to the Slack versus Discord thing, but
yeah, very much so. And like, I mean, I didn't say this earlier, but one of the things I talked about Saturday was I had a conversation with someone in my degree program about they're doing like NLP work on some medical stuff, and we talked about it. And I work in I don't work in I don't work in the same space, that I work in kind of an adjacent space for other things that I do about things that are related to like patient-doctor interaction. So I'm really interested in that space, and I didn't see any of the links that I guess it was this week was that well, today and yesterday. Okay, that's why I didn't see most of the things that Morgan posted. But like, yeah, like the conversation we just had, in addition to those links, like that's definitely something of interest, and something that I'm realizing as I do more stuff in the data science space and like applications is actually potentially really interesting to me, because I know it might be kind of silly or quite naive of me, but I'm learning that there's a lot of really, really, really potentially meaningful, even in spite of problems with the American characteristic, which is a subtle nod to like things that with other countries' characteristics that are sometimes said about how they tailor their systems to them. But even in the context of America's very bizarre healthcare situation, you know, what are some what you know, my whole thing is like, what are the ways you can try to I don't know, push things in different directions. And I think that's a really interesting one that could be useful. So I have a lot of interest in that space, and we talked about it a little bit before. It comes up here a little bit more like directly, because we talked about like VR or these like sort of AR or XR for like health tech and stuff, or like health monitoring, but straight up medical, I think one of the links was about I'm I'm really curious about like the PHI affinity group link, and just all that stuff is a lot of things there that I would definitely like to kind of center a bit more as a potential project space going forward, because I think that would be something that I'm sort of about to do and would like to do more of for sure, and in a maybe more implementation-y sense. And maybe like I could see ways where it spins very easily into, I mean, in an ideal sense, something like a Google Summer Code project, where we get people who really want to do some of the technical work down the road there. But that's just painting a pretty picture for the future about that, because it's something that I'm interested in.
That's awesome. So just related to some of these, I know the groups that do the federated learning for, the neuroimaging, federated learning for the records, and the libraries that are used for that as part of the Open Mind group. And postdocs that are in all of those particular groups, including, well, I think she's moved on now, but somebody who was working in Ben Goldacre's group in Oxford. So I'd be really happy to talk about that. And I think it's these are all things that are made. I think are made like more acute or more salient for mental health healthcare.
Yeah, this is the link to Biomed. This is the Federated Learning in Healthcare. So this is a white paper, a GitHub repo. So this is, just a federated model for this. And I guess this is like for, what is this like for, just to apply all these different models to healthcare and just take it out of the box and use it, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's you see this a lot where it's people are giving you tools so that you can run models on data that, in essence, you don't have access to, right? So it's you can or that you can share data that you don't want to give people access to, but you want to give them you want to be able to pool data across sites so that that models have more power. And I think like particularly important in the United States because there's no centralization of this stuff, and everybody's hospitals are all making basically money grabs for their own patients' data.
Yeah.
They shouldn't. I disagree that it's theirs, but in the United States, that is kind of how it works. It's awesome to see. I mean, I was looking at Ben Goldacre's group because I knew some postdoc there. But back when my wife was doing data science in the UK, and like the NHS data repository is just amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's so as you can see in his inaugural lecture that Cory Doctorow has a link to, he then, and in the audience he has like the head of data science for the NHS, right? Yeah. And they were able to go through and show that how well their doctors are doing in terms of staying abreast of the latest latest evidence for particular statins or particular treatments, things like that, but also where they weren't, and then being able to kind of not fine people or something, but just give them the feedback that they need to be able to improve service, right? Yeah. And I think this is a lot like, and my brother's Marine, former Marine, well, they never former, but talks a lot about the VA healthcare system and how much it's improved over the last 20 years. And I think a lot of that, I believe a lot of that is driven by their approach to having lots of feedback circuits. And I'll try and find the book on that, but it just reminds me a lot of what Ben Goldacre has been doing with the NHS and improving care. Yeah. So I think it'd be, if there's like ways in which we can kind of focus this or into some projects or something, I'd be really interested.
Yeah, sounds good. We've touched upon some things of interest, and I think that would be a very worthy thing to do in the next year. Would be like, let's think about it and focus it and pick out some things. I have a little, like, some light impedance from some coursework that's like doing very, like this hinting at some things. So I'm not really where I'm getting where I want to be for some of the things I want to do. But I think picking some specific targets of interest that have like all that stuff, I think is quite interesting, and seeing that. I think it's pretty heartening to see, like what you said about the VA's improvement, and like I think what's exciting to me is the possibility space, especially for things that are like in the invisible illness category, and some things about neurodivergence and those sorts of things. I'm really curious. I have to check to see what someone was talking about, because they mentioned someone at the university that was doing some different topics in similar spaces. And I'm waiting. I will check later if they followed up on that. But I would like to just put all this stuff in a space and talk about it. And probably we'll do it in the Discord, I guess. And I might make a specific channel. Like I think there's sort of a time to plant the seeds for some new projects, because I think I as a personal disclosure, I feel like, you know, I haven't created enough opportunity for other things to develop recently, as like in labbing and stuff, other things. I'm trying to encourage people to come in and join certain projects. So the condition features is there, and deciding ethics tech ahead maybe is a little, I don't know. I have the opportunity. I might submit something to, the submissions are still open for anyone who wants to participate in NICWIC or other things like that, which is not an ethics conference by any means, but we have a history there, and they appreciate our talks there for what we've been doing. It's actually been, especially been quite complimentary there to other talks, I think. But it's like, what's ahead, you know? And I would like to make a space for, if I was to, you know, seed fund, as in fund a channel of discussion. If I was to pick something right now, it would definitely be like sort of this medical health tech related stuff. That's one thing. There's still the philosophy and history of stuff that we talked about before, which I'm doing this. I feel good about. Like a specific space to discuss like the project development of something like that would be important. And I want to very much encourage like we're getting here because we're sharing links and talking about things. And I'm not at all saying that's a problem. That's exactly why we're here. But like when it comes to getting some of this stuff moving, I think about that too. I don't know if that's where you wanted to kind of steer the next conversation, Bradley, but I was offering kind of a dovetail, so I don't know what you wanted to talk about.
If I could link it to the computational psychiatry a bit more, you know, the Child Mind Institute and dataset in particular, I think brings up a really interesting problematic area that needs much more attention, which is that for mental health care, you know, it's one, psychiatry cares about neurodevelopment. These issues arise while these people are still children, and a lot of it comes out as problems at school, or a lot of there's an interplay of you know, problems at school, problems with learning style, you know, all of these things. And you know, what's the best approach? You know, how to tailor issues, and a lot of it again is brought up in that talk on autism. That is the last link there. Just talking about behavioral outcomes with kids that are placed. I mean, they're talking about some of the kind of the worst cases, but you know, there's a cohort of kids that were kept in a particularly awful conditions in Romania, and they've tracked those kids, and just the differences with outcomes with appropriate interventions or appropriate
yes.
You know, and just the incredible differences and how to identify those early, and the problems that parents have getting help for their kids. You know, one, identifying what the problem is, and two, then getting that help is I think the central challenge in psychiatry. You know, so I think it's really caught up with the healthcare issues that we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say, I think not to continue to spin the merry-go-round on this, but I think that's a really great space. Everything that Morgan just said, I think, is a great space to look into. Kind of what I would like to add to the I think it's a great way to say it. The cognitive science hexagon, like those things, and particularly in terms of ADHD, in terms of the regulatory stuff, the co-regulation of the environment, how that affects the development and outcome, like that would be kind of a where do we go with the cognition stuff, and that's kind of why I was using these funny terms like person studies and like these things that mean more than just, so yes, that's an illusion in that pathway, but yeah, I think I really want to look, very excited to look at those links and flesh out more there.
Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to go over I wanted to bring up one more thing from the chat, which was Amanda, a while back, we talked about that Mathematics of Consciousness seminar link, and she said she recognizes a few names from it. Neil Seth, Metzinger, Catherine Town, Bowdry, and Friston. So check out that Mathematics of Consciousness seminar link. So there's a lot of good stuff there. Yeah, so why don't we move to talking about, I don't know if Jesse can pull up the list of submissions or things that we have on the docket. I'd like to do that next. If you could share your screen, Jesse.
I just muted myself at a problematic time as I'm setting everything else up. Okay, I think this is going to work out. You could probably insert that sound clip about anything I've said at any point in my time with the lab, and it'll be accurate. Okay, I think this is going to work out. All right. Oh, someone's been taking notes. Thank you for adding some things. All right, I think we're here.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of things that I haven't put in here, but yeah. You can see this, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll record that. There we go. So we've kind of hit the end of the road. I think you can see nice enough there. It's quite strange to break this out. Well, let's zoom in as much as we can, I guess. We've had a number of things going on. And this is even things that are just still kind of open. I don't know what you want to essentially like close these things out, or
yeah, we could start there. So that of course is closed, I guess. We've done, Amanda did a presentation and we talked about it. And, oh yeah, I don't have that paper out right now, but yeah, we could talk a little bit about it at the end of the meeting. But yeah, so this is closed out. I don't know if we want to do any follow up on this.
Well, I basically see. I would like to maybe, ideally, and I don't know if this will happen. Ideally, I would love to do kind of a recap of the conference. But then I think we want to work on Evan's paper in particular, and probably my concept idea into a paper too. I should do something. I should finish whatever is there. As I speak with a little chagrin, but I think there's some things to finish here. But the event itself has happened, and I think it's been mostly a success. So, like Amanda's great. Any other? I don't know. Do you want it to be on the? Do you want this stuff to be on the board or not? Let's put it that way. I can put things underneath it, or just let it be.
Why don't we actually? Every time we do a conference, I'd like to do like a follow up if possible. So why don't we kind of? I don't know if we want to say this is completed and then say we have a completed category. Or, I don't know. We should probably. Or done. Yeah, I guess that's good. And then have like a, maybe a follow up to that. So what kinds of things we need to follow up on for that?
Okay. I think what I'm going to do, it's not letting me do the drop down thing right now. Yeah, can I do that? Well, I'll sort that out later.
Okay, yeah.
I'll just leave it at this.
And then I guess we can just close out the web conference one.
For now, yeah. Let's do that. Okay.
Yeah, so then we have that. We have
this Diva Worm collaboration journal. I forget what that was.
That was a paper we're working on there. That's kind of still in progress, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. NICWIC 2024. That's still it's still CFP stage.
Yes, don't hold me to it. It's likely to be extended, so we have time to think about it more if we want to do it. Yes, if anybody is interested in that, you're welcome to submit to it. I have ideas. I am considering whether or not to push something out there. Let's see.
Yeah, the Gibsonian info preprint is still kind of being worked on. That's not quite there yet, but it'll be there pretty soon, probably by the end of the year, to kind of look through and see where we are with that. So that's kind of like one of those things. It's getting closer, but it's not there. Yeah.
So would this be, I guess, preparing submission?
Yeah. We'll probably make it a preprint, but
Okay. Okay. Post-Fuchs review. I think we've kind of done this. I just don't know if it's been formalized in anything. This is it right here, even, it seems.
Right.
Or at least the notes to it. What do we want to do with that?
Amanda, do you have any thoughts on that, or?
I mean, a lot of that would end up in whatever extended paper version of the neurophenomenology project. So, so that kind of, those thoughts will be largely captured probably in what I've been working on. I don't think we ever put together anything outside of this Notion page, but maybe it wouldn't take too much work to organize those notes a little and put them into a blog post, just as a simple share. We read this book, here are some thoughts. It doesn't have to be anything too complicated.
Yeah, it would probably be good to revisit them too, because we kind of dovetail. We're sort of weaving threads to Fuchs and Varela's lineage. Yeah. I'm just trying to sort out what this should be. I think we're mostly on this. We're still on hold. I guess I'll leave it there for now. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that. Okay. I think this is.
Yeah, that's
done.
This
happened.
Yeah, that's been submitted, and then if we have to, do some revisions on it, then we'll put that on there separately. So that's been submitted. We also, if you go to, I can't remember what channel it is in the Slack, but we finally got the proceedings article for 2022 published.
Yes,
So
I saw that.
Yeah, that was myself and Jesse and Angela Pang. Yes.
Okay. ISPSM recap. We have that. This is a few. These are like a future looking thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like we can probably close this out. I don't think we did any specified for neuroscience.
Yeah.
So
the EI workshop, we'll have to think about what we want to do for that, because the deadline is usually, I think, like in maybe February or March. Like they'll send out a notification and you have to submit something. But it's good to think about it now, like especially considering what we did last year, or if there's something new we want to do this year, just to have that ready to go. And, we could make it thematic, like, we could have all things that are interrelated, or we could just do our own thing. It just really depends on how we want to do things. And, I'm thinking about, like, this question I think Jesse brought up earlier about the 4 E's, like, is 4 E's enough? And I think it is, but, like, maybe not, like, in the way that we'd like to maybe see it. Like, or maybe it was Amanda was talking about this too, where, you have these models of cognition, going beyond just kind of those 4 E's and then into, like, development and evolution. So that might be something, but we'll think about that. The Frontier Map preprint. That's Jesse.
That's still live.
Okay.
And it's in the limbo. It's at it's somewhere at the train station. Harry Potter 7. The limbo of is it going to submerge or not? It's still there though. I think actually, so a little more seriously, the actual context for it. This isn't really a spoiler or anything, I guess. Frontier Maps is sort of uniquely related to the broader project I'm working on, and I think would be actually great. A lot of the work I've done a lot of the work I put in the Frontier Map has led me down to realizing, okay, I've just created this like framework for trying to understand some things, and then I realized there was stuff linked with it, and it's like, and I think it's in my sort of academic career, it's becoming an early lesson of could I have written the paper like several months ago and finished it and put a preprint out there? Yes, I could have. And I probably should have, and that would be the ideal thing to do, especially in academic timelines where everything was shifting. But at the same time, I'm giving myself a little bit of understanding that there's quite specific reasons that have been important for me to follow as I go down the path of what Frontier Map has been. This Frontier Map has led into a lot of other things that I'm having to sort out, and that's how it goes sometimes. But yes, it's definitely, it is active. It's actually, I think, should be in the draft state. But yeah, that's all it is for now.
Okay.
The recap is there.
Okay.
Did you want to say anything about? Well, I guess. Do you want to say anything about these other ones?
Yeah. So learning on graphs just happened this week, so that's something that I'll probably talk more about in this week's DevoWorm meeting. This is, of course, the Learning on Graphs conference. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I forgot. There you go.
So yeah, the Learning on Graphs conference. That's we didn't submit a paper for that, so the paper is not like relevant. But there were a lot of talks, and they're on YouTube. So if you go to Learning on Graphs search for that on YouTube. They have like their live streams from the sessions, so they're all there online. And I might try to do like a kind of an overview in DevoWorm this week. We'll see if that happens, but there's a lot there, and it's a really interesting area. A lot of stuff going on in that area of graph neural networks and graph computing. So, the idea is you take like a data set with features, you explore it as a graph embedding, and then that graph embedding can either be turned into like some sort of graph that you can analyze, or some sort of latent space, or some sort of other type of representation that can be computed on. So there's a lot of innovation in that area, but we didn't submit anything this year. So that's closed out, but it's still available on YouTube. Then there's the Neurotech X Hackathon.
That's right.
So that happened.
Going on right now.
Oh, it's ongoing? Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's happening. It would have started about 2 a.m. my time. Because actually it might have even started earlier. Because I know one of the organizers is in India for it. So this is a global hackathon. It's 10 big sites. They could be. I mean, they're definitely over like 800 people in Discord. And yeah, it's the data challenge this year is going to be a sleep data set. And it looks like IDUN, which is a company in Switzerland, has donated data from their earbuds. So this is, put earbuds in, go to sleep. This is very a lot of groups are working on this, including Philips. Actually had a product that they were selling, consumer product they were selling. Putting in sound while the person's sleeping to improve sleep. Again, I'm not sure where the science is on this, but a lot of groups are doing this, and so should be really interesting. I can say more about it next week. In terms of the hackathon, or I should say the data challenge part is actually going till mid-December. So the data set will get released today, and people can start working on it. But there's also as part of the hackathon, and this is this school in France, so that they've got chapters in lots of other countries now, called 42, which was started by someone there, a French businessman, started these schools that are software engineering schools, but very interactive, like project-based schools, and they'll be competing on some other challenges, or putting together little projects this weekend.
Great. So that's great. I wish we could have participated, but I think it's good to follow along anyways. Yeah,
it's pretty hardcore. Like I tell people, it's actually pretty hardcore, because you've got again, like a lot of students who are doing this as like part of their studies.
Yeah.
So you really if you're hoping, yeah. But if you're just interested in collaborations, like I think it's really interesting too. And again, like I was so impressed with last year's results on brain age prediction from resting EEG using the Child Mind Institute data. So really looking forward to this, and we'll say more about it next week.
Yeah, let's keep tabs on the results of that. That'd be great. Yeah, so that's good. And then NeurIPS 2023, that's happening this next week, maybe. It's in New Orleans, physically, but I think they also have a virtual component. We'll check in on that.
And of course, workshops after that, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, there. I was looking at it. There's sort of the classic. There's what you'd expect there to be. There's a little bit less. Hold on. Yeah, let's just look briefly at these since we're here. Oops, I lost everybody again. Here's the workshops for this year. Kind of their typical, like, everything stuffed in your IPS. Oh, this one looks interesting. Actually, would be curious about this one. This offbeat. I don't know if anybody sees anything that stands out that particularly want to follow. Generative AI in biology.
Yeah, that would be great.
I won't really be participating that much this year, but I've actually tried to volunteer and been do a lot of things with them in the past. But this, I'm using I have 2 things going on. Excuse right now. Multi-agent security.
What was that last one? Something about symmetry. At the very bottom.
Geometry and neural representations.
Yeah.
Let's see what this is.
Neat.
Yeah, and they have a Slack channel.
Yeah.
You can join now.
Yeah, they've had this for multiple years. This is pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty well developed workshop.
Yeah. Geometric deep learning. So I posted some things in the math channel because Taco Cohen and others, I see more and more geometric algebra coming into various people's machine learning, and it's a lot of it is going to be finding symmetry and variance things and etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll put the link in the chat too.
And as I said, Charles Martin is going to be in the heavy tails workshop, and so that's a lot of again, physicists bringing their skills and tools to machine learning. He's going to be giving one of those talks, and anyway, he lives in sort of in my neighborhood, so we've been talking about meeting up for coffee or something like that, learning more about how he can use, because I mentioned the 50 years of renormalization group work. Yeah. Because his advisor was not the guy they were talking about, but the like a University of Chicago guy for Fieldberry, and anyway, love to hear more from him in terms of how condensed matter physics is important for deep learning.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think this is going to be particularly. I wonder what will happen there. Okay, was there any other workshop? I mean, there's obviously interesting things in many of these workshops. I'm just looking at things to tag here for now.
The causal representations at the top with So Scholpoff. I would definitely want to see what they're doing.
Oops. Okay. And then we can talk about that more if we want to. But I think these are the things that kind of admin tasks that we kind of put on the back burner.
Yeah. And I think those are like just longer term things, but we'll talk about those like maybe next week or something. But yeah, I guess what I wanted to do is to think about like maybe for the next year, what kinds of things are happening, what do we want to do, and some of these admin tasks definitely we want to think longer term about what we want to do. So if you want to do, a project, propose, some deliverables for the project, but also think about like how do we put it out in the world? Like, do we want to build a website? Do we want to have like papers or presentations? We have all these tools. We have the blog, we have YouTube, we have conferences, we have webs, we could put a website together. We could have like, specialized things that we want to maybe like a host some sort of event. There are all sorts of things we can do. So these are things, in the next, we can start out on January 1st saying this is our goal for the year. And, if we achieve it or not is not the point. It's just to think about how do we achieve this in the new year and see where it goes.
Yeah, I just put down the position paper for Christian Futures or whatever we want to call that thing.
Okay.
And then the medical health tech space project, just to have it there. I don't know if there's anything else people want to float as an idea to think about or be better or brainstorm on for the next, into January, because I think it's a good time to do that.
I'm excited about the cybernetics reading group. I think that this will be a good transition from just reading human use of human beings. And I guess I'd have to think more about what we'd want to come of that outside of just the, YouTube channel recordings of our discussions. But I'm excited about that. I've found some other things about, I think memory is an interesting thing to start with, which is what was the focus of the last paper, inspired by like what was ultimately a very short passage in human use of human beings. But I think it's, I said this before, I think that's one area where the last, 50, like 70 years of research could actually, that's significant. And so seeing what the progress has been and linking it back to what Weiner says and framing that as like one example of trying to answer the more general question of like what cybernetics style thinking can bring to the current state of science.
There was somewhere in, I think, one of the discussions, and maybe here, maybe like one of these two, and I'm going to look at it right now, but Bradley had a really, really eloquent way of speaking, like an eloquent tie into sort of the reimagining cybernetics project and sort of the goal of like, how it was something along the lines of how do we deal with like creating more nuance or something in talking about the different states. I forget what it was.
That's one of about how you have different states that like in cybernetic models usually we think in terms of discrete states, but we have to think more in terms of continuous systems for, and we have to kind of unite that explicitly because people will talk about that. But, like if you had like, say, a boxes and arrows model versus like talking about cybernetics, those things aren't necessarily unified. And then when people go to use it, say like a neuroscience or something, it's how do we put all that together?
There's something. It's there. I'll come back to it. Like, it was sort of like, it was basically trying to remixing or dovetailing from like their reimagining cybernetics project itself, whatever that, like, project idea, I suppose.
Yeah.
And now kind of blending it into where we are, like what can we, I don't know the language for it, but what to do with it. Okay.
All right.
Anything else we want to mention for these like other ideas to just talk about for now?
No, I think we can move on.
Okay.
But just think about those things. We can come back to it next time. Okay, so I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk about my archive paper, but I'll talk about it in Diva this week, and we'll talk about it more. So this is a news and views from Nature, and this is Bradley Wojtek, who's at UC San Diego, and I know that he works with Allison Moultrie, and so like he's done a lot of interesting stuff with the EEG.
He used to be my desk mate.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, there you go. Anyways, he does like data science and neuroscience, and this is the data science future of neuroscience theory. So this is our position paper, I guess, an approach for integrating the wealth of heterogeneous brain data from gene expression and neurotransmitter receptor density to structure and function allows neuroscientists to easily place their data within the broader neuroscientific context. So this is actually just kind of saying that you have all like this sort of data science of the brain, and you have this, you need to come up with a theoretical framework, I guess. It may seem kind of obvious, but the history of neuroscience has really been kind of averse to theory. I mean, like, there have been theories that have been like kind of not well integrated with the mainstream of neuroscience. A lot of neuroscience is like, doing experiments and gathering data. And especially as we moved into like the next gen era, we're getting more and more data. We're getting a lot of imaging data, but it really does it is hard to integrate with any sort of theory. And so this is especially with like different types of brains, integrating like individual differences data, all sorts of things like that. How do we, in other, different types of data with gene expression and receptor density stuff, and, just having a unified data model that can then be plugged into theory. I guess that's what he's trying to advocate for. So imagine we conduct a human neuroimaging experiment that shows the neural activity in the Brodmann area 46, which is an area of neocortex, scales with the demands of the task the participants performed, and that the activity is statistically higher in older adults than younger adults. What do we do with this information? An expert might guess that this was a working memory or attention task on the basis of their familiarity with the relevant neuroimaging literature. But that expert, like myself, may know relatively little about neurogenetics, neurochemistry, or cortical evolution. And because of their and my own knowledge gaps, we'll be unable to see how those results fit into the broader neuroscientific context. So this is what, in that Piccinini keynote, he was advocating for a very inclusive cognitive science. So, you have like things like genetics and biology and philosophy and, actual psychology and neuroscience. And all those things have to be integrated. It's true, but also when any one person wants to understand something like the brain or the mind, they have to, sort of have expertise in a large number of areas. And so someone coming to an integrated data set or an integrated approach might have a baseline in, like psychology or philosophy, but their knowledge of genetics or biochemistry or something might be lacking, and vice versa. So it's like, you don't have all that knowledge. You try to give people as much knowledge as you can, but still, like, keeping up with the literature in any one area is tough, much less going across areas. So that's one challenge of interdisciplinarity, is like getting a handle on every field that is relevant. But also the other problem is building a model of all those different domains of knowledge. So how do they fit in? How do all these things fit into the broader neuroscientific context? If we are to develop anything resembling a set of theories for how the brain gives rise to behavior, cognition, and disease, we need a way for placing human neuroimaging data within that greater context. And so this is where he brings up the open source Python package NeuroMaps, introduced by Marcello, Hansen, and colleagues. And this is in the issue of Nature Methods that he's writing in. So this is from Nature Methods, and there's the sort of the source article here, which is cited at the bottom, provides an invaluable tool for doing just that. So basically what they do is they contextualize the data. They've solved several technical problems to allow easy data integration. So NeuroMaps offers functions for easily transforming between 4 standard human brain template atlases. So FS-Average, FSLR, Civet, and MNI 152. So these are the different brain atlases. So you can put it into a context. Armed with that ability to transform between different coordinate systems, Marcello, Hansen, et al. Then sought out numerous heterogeneous data sets, placing them in the same coordinate system. We can then group these included data sets into 4 broad categories: architectural, cellular, dynamics, and function. So when they say architectural, they mean sort of the architecture of the brain, being able to put the MRI, or say like a set of MRI images, and co-registering them with a particular brain. So you can look at functional connectivity, inter-subject variability, and so forth. Then you have data from the Allen Human Brain Atlas, where they've made some very good observations of cellular complexity and cellular structure. You can take that and use neurotransmitter data and map that all to the architecture. Then you have dynamics. So these are like the neural dynamics that we're interested in, measured in different ways and put into this framework. And then function, which is evolutionary expansion, developmental expansion, and some derived functional maps, which allow you to think about this in terms of, not just in terms of humans, but in terms of model organisms and other things like that. So this is, all these different data sets are placed in the same spatial framework. This allows researchers to statistically compare their spatial profiles to ask novel research questions. So, but these spatial maps cannot be compared using simple correlations because the topography of neural data is spatially autocorrelated. So that's a statistical challenge. That's somewhat of a technical challenge, but they deal with that as well in this approach. So this is, I think, pointing to how a lot of this integration can be done, and it's very focused on like a coding and statistical approach. So if you want to take all these different data sets and integrate them, the way to do that is to you have to come up with like sort of a framework for it, and then in this case they have to solve a number of technical challenges. So you basically have all different types of data out there. How do you integrate them together and present them as a unified thing, so that people don't need to dig through the data sets and they can kind of paper over their lack of expertise, say in like genetics, if they're a neuroimaging person, or neuroimaging expertise if they're a genetics person or whatever. And so this is kind of shows an image of a side view of the human brain. This is the architecture, the cellular, the dynamics, the function at voxel level resolution. So we have all this voxel level information. So we can take a voxel out of the brain and the way it's represented and get all this information out. So this is all integrated, and then you can mine it for different insights. And so that's the goal, and that can lead to theoretical insights, or kind of thinking about how these things are related. So what does NeuroMaps portend for the future of neuroscience? Are more data better, and better data integration enough? So is it just enough to integrate data and bring more data to the table, or do we need more conceptual tools as well? And I would argue for that, of course. But So algorithmic churning through massive amounts of data is no guarantee of mechanistic understanding. So this is where, they cite Jonas and Cording, which is, can a neuroscientist understand a neuroprocessor or a microprocessor? So this is that classic paper that, posits, can we understand a microprocessor just by observing it and not knowing the process behind it or what it does? Or, we can kind of learn what it does, but can we understand that thing as sort of, just observing it enough? So this is kind of what they're getting at here. Will more neural data be unreasonably effective for uncovering mechanistic insights, similarly to how more data has been shown to improve the performance of deep learning and artificial intelligence? And again, this is a paper, that sort of advocates for that Norwegian view of, machine learning and deep learning, or of AI, which is that you just throw enough data at it and it'll be enough, it'll give you insights, or it'll do great things. A miracle will happen or whatever. So neuromaps in this paper, Markello, Hansen et al., they emphasize that the current state of neuromaps is a beginning, not an end. Data-driven approaches are good for sort of integrating information, but not necessarily for kind of getting at the actual theory. So the theory building is a separate thing. But sometimes we need to have these data frameworks to really do the theory building effectively. So this is, I think, an insight here, is that, if you don't have the data, we can theorize all day long about what the brain does, but at the end of the day, probably not right. I guess we could be right intuitively, but, we really do need to have these integrated data frameworks. So this is a nice paper. And then this is the citation here, Markello et al. Nature Methods. This is from 2022. And, there's some interesting papers here as well that they've cited.
Yeah, those are all great references there too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's something, this is something to definitely follow up on with respect to our discussions about like an integrative cognitive science and thinking about it. So that's that. And then maybe I'll talk about this paper. This is choosing the right algorithm with hints from complexity theory. So this is a long paper, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is about choosing suitable algorithms for different things and kind of talking about complexity theory. So it kind of goes back, we were talking about the renormalization paper, 50 years of renormalization. And this again is like thinking about complexity theory with respect to computer science. So this is kind of hitting upon things like big O notation and things like that. So this was presented at a conference, but it's an extended version of that. So the abstract reads, choosing a suitable algorithm for the myriad of different research heuristics is difficult when faced with the novel optimization problem. So, a lot of times we're in computer science, people are trying to optimize for things or do some sort of optimization problem. So, there are a lot of examples of optimization problems in computer science, and a lot of times we don't know which algorithm is best. Sometimes algorithms can be, take a long time to run. Sometimes the complexity is very low, and but we don't want to choose an algorithm just based on that. We want to choose it based on whether it can solve the problem well. In this work, we argue that the purely academic question of what could be the best possible algorithm in a certain broad class of black box optimizers can give fruitful indications in which direction to search for good established optimization heuristics. So this, goes back to kind of how, we choose algorithms. Sometimes we'll use things like optimization heuristics, which means, some problems are so hard that we can't solve them easily using any algorithm. But what we want to do is we want to choose the algorithm that does a good enough job of solving it or optimizing. So we get a good answer or a good enough answer, and that's what we want. But we also want it to, not to run forever. We want it to be pretty efficient. So we demonstrate this approach on the recently proposed DLB benchmark, for which the only known results are ON3 runtimes for several classic evolutionary algorithms and N2 log N runtime for estimation of distribution algorithm. Our finding that the unary unbiased black box complexity is only ON squared suggests that the Metropolis algorithm is an interesting candidate. And we proved that it solves the DLB problem in quadratic time. So this is where the Metropolis algorithm is an algorithm where you have, it's like the idea that, you go through like a grid pattern on in a city, and you're trying to find the shortest path from one point to another. And you have to go, either kind of down one block and up one block and do that, or you can go kind of, diagonally and find the shortest path. So it's a pathfinding algorithm to find the shortest path. And they talk about this DLB problem. They show that this solves the DLB problem in quadratic time. Since we also proved that better runtimes cannot be obtained in the class of unary unbiased algorithms, we shift our attention to algorithms that use the information of more parents to generate new solutions. An artificial algorithm of this type having an ON log N runtime leads to the result that the significance-based compact genetic algorithm, or SIG-CGA, can solve the DLB problem also in time, ON log N, with high probability. Our experiments show a remarkably good performance of the Metropolis algorithm, clearly the best of all algorithms regarded for reasonable problem sizes. So their work basically suggests that the Metropolis algorithm, which is this classic algorithm, which isn't really that complex, can do, has really good performance on a number of tasks. So they're really looking at randomized search heuristics. So, they mention that this class of search heuristics includes stochastic hill climbers, which is where you have a space that has optimal solutions where you have to climb a hill to get to the the global solution so every solution is on a hill, and sometimes you climb a hill to get to the local solution, sometimes you climb to get to the optimal solution. And so an algorithm or an agent that's doing these computations has to hill climb to get to the optimal solution, but they don't really know where the solution is, so they have to explore the space, and they have to climb these hills on this landscape of solutions, and they have to they have to be able to get to the peak of that hill. Their whole job is to climb these hills looking for the optimal solution. So that's the kind of thing we're doing here. We also can use evolutionary algorithms, which uses different types of evolutionary operators like crossover, mutation, and selection to sort of find an optimal answer. Ant colony optimizers, which find ants will build colonies. They'll build these networks of pheromone trails, and then you can use a bunch, an agent-based approach to find the optimal solution there. You can also use estimation of distribution algorithms, or EDAs. These have all been very successful at solving optimization problems for which no established problem-specific algorithm exists. So this is where, we don't know, we have a problem, but we don't know what algorithm to use. And so we can use these randomized search heuristics to sort of find the optimal solution or a set of optimal solutions, and we can evaluate them after the fact. We can usually find a good enough solution to the problem using these kind of algorithms. One of the issues with this is that they're based on random search. So, the idea is if I were to search something randomly, it's going to take a long time. Now, the reason you want to use a random approach is because you don't want to make assumptions about your search space. But if you, have a randomized search heuristic, you can explore the space, but also lock onto solutions. And that's why they use these different strategies to use sort of the properties of these models to find, to reduce that search space to some set of heuristic solutions. So, we apply these kind of problems to this kind of these search spaces. As such, they are applied massively to novel problems for which some understanding of the problem and the desired solution exists, but little algorithmic expertise. And so then we can, the question is, how do we search the space? What are the best algorithms? And so, they kind of, what we propose in this work is a heuristic approach, building on the notion of a black box complexity, first introduced in this citation. In very simple words, the unrestricted black box complexity of an optimization problem is the performance of the best black box optimizer for this problem. So the unrestricted black box complexity is just the performance of an optimizer. So basically, whatever the best generalized optimizer is basically characterizing this complexity. And so it is thus a notion not referring to a particular class of search heuristics, such as genetic algorithms or EDAs. Black box complexity can be used successfully to obtain universal lower bounds. Knowing that this black box complexity of the needle problem is exponential, we know of no genetic algorithm or colony optimizer or EDA that can solve the needle problem in a reasonable time, which is sub-exponential in their case. With specialized notions of black box complexity, more specific lower bounds can be obtained. And then this is where they kind of apply these different approaches. And they come to the conclusion that you can use a metropolis algorithm. And it's pretty much, sort of a generalized algorithm for this. So the DLB problem is the deceiving leading blocks problem, which is basically where these authors conducted rigorous runtime analyses of several classic evolutionary algorithms, all leading to runtime guarantees on the order of n to the third with optimal parameter choices. For the EDA univariate marginal distribution algorithm, a runtime guarantee of n squared log n was proven in this paper. And so, so they do a bunch of experimentation and they basically get this result. So it's kind of an interesting paper. And, it's 57 pages, so I don't want to go through much more of it. But basically, it's, kind of getting into some of these ideas of computational complexity and ways that we might be able to address sort of the unknown and how we solve those kind of problems. So, okay, so what do we have in the chat here? So Morgan said, yes, the NeuroMaps package.
Yeah, sorry, that was from the previous paper.
Right.
Yeah. But, I say a lot more about what they're adding there with NeuroMaps and as truly multimodal as it is, it's important to remember that a lot of those additional maps are just data from one brain.
Yeah.
Like even Big Brain Project, which is doing this, micron level analysis. It's a micron level analysis of one brain.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not getting anywhere close to some representation of population distribution.
Right.
and variability and heterogeneity and et cetera, which is really so important once you want to say something about health. So as great as that is, but again, like Bradley is the perfect, is a great person to talk about these issues because he's both in neuroscience and at the Data Science Institute there. So he teaches. I believe he still teaches like the Intro to Data Science class. The big one. In the big hall. And then, like you said, he's the one who has the electrophysiological papers with Alison Moutry on cerebral organoids and things like that. So, Alison knows how important getting those kind of multimodal maps, or getting so much more data is going to be necessary to start teasing apart the analysis from hopefully lots of organoids at scale, where you've made small changes, small modifications to environmental conditions, et cetera, and you're tracking those all over time. And it's a really exciting time, but it very much needs more data and and thoughts about how to structure it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious on the Metropolis, that's such an old algorithm.
Yeah.
Right? Like didn't we know that? Or like what, or was some of those evolutionary algorithms that came later, did they kind of steal some thunder, so to speak, and then these guys are kind of coming back and saying, Metropolis is still best to use Metropolis and just kind of because with all of these it's the runtime is problematic, but but you're all anyway. I'm curious what they, or what the conference that was in terms of
let's see, that was IJCAI. I don't know. Oh, it's probably the International Conference of AI, some sort of AI. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
But I guess the point of that, I'm not really sure. I guess it's like, you have different algorithms that you can use for a problem. And so sometimes, people argue, well, you only need to use this one algorithm, and it kind of captures a lot of the complexity of a host of problems. I would say, I guess the point, and people have made the argument, people criticize, one of the big criticisms of evolutionary algorithms is that they're slow, which is like, well, yes, but, what can they really solve that's unique? Can they solve one class of problem that no other algorithm can solve? And so, it really comes down to like your problem for one thing, because the different problems have different structures. Like, sometimes it's really easy to search. If I have a linear problem, it's just like I know where the hill is. It's like on a slope and it goes up to the top. Other times you have a lot of local minima or maxima, which they call local maxima, where you have to explore a bunch of them to see which one is the best. And so you need this sort of complexity in the algorithm to get to that point. But, if you take the thing as like kind of a general class of problems, I guess they're arguing that Metropolis is the best. I don't know. I mean,
I'd be curious. What that does make me think of, though, is this discussion of nonlinear methods, where there's still a lot of discussion about like, well, which of these 30 different tools should I use? And the funny thing is that really, to some degree, those tools are all giving you different answers. They're more representing different facets of the same thing, and that each one involves an optimization, and you need to think about how to do that optimization right. But the output of each of those optimizations is really a different facet of kind of the same, the same noumena. We need all of those facets, or again, like the issue that seems to come up in the nonlinear time series analysis, spatial temporal analysis, is that kind of each one of those summary statistics that we get at the end is valuable, and but just one last thing. It was interesting, like going to the Net Neuro group's page at McGill, and seeing that they just have a new paper on anesthesia that I think Amanda will find really interesting. And I dropped it in the Slack. So it's a great group, and I see some other people involved on that particular anesthesia paper from the Neuromaps guys that I'm sure would be worth discussing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just took a look. It looks interesting.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Thanks for attending. It's a very good talk, as usual, with everyone here. Yeah, and so...
I'm looking forward to your diva worm discussion of your paper. Yeah, because you got to say more about that sometime.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll cover that maybe if I'll kind of give a little bit of a post view in the meeting next week. So, all right. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.